Welcome to your passion, purpose, and personal brand. I'm your host, Lisa McGuire, and today's guest is someone who brings a breath of fresh air into a world that often misunderstands neurodivergent brilliance. Jake Brown is a former agency leader turned business coach who helps ADHD founders stop fighting their brains and start building lives and businesses that fit them. After rebuilding 4 agencies and watching high-achieving visionaries burn out trying to follow business rules that didn't work for their wiring, Jake now teaches people how to create their own owner's manuals so they can stop feeling broken and start feeling seen. Wouldn't that be nice? He helps late diagnosed adults realize there was never anything wrong with them, that they simply needed the right adapters, not a new identity. And if you're someone who's built success on paper, but quietly feels stuck inside, this conversation's going to be for you. So Jake, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Lisa. Glad to be here.
All right. So before you were doing this work, what did success look like for you? And what was happening underneath it that most people would not have seen?
Oh, man, heavy hitter right out of the gates.
Right out.
Yeah. I mean, I know you. I should expect this. So, man, what did success look like? Honestly, it was, I didn't realize this till later, but not being last and not being on the bottom half of the pack. That's what drove me for a long time. So it was like, I had to be better than other people because specifically with my ADHD going up and down, I always had to be better in case it crashed. I had room to recover. My failures wouldn't be seen. So it was this constant drive of numbers, accolades, people clapping for me, people liking me, because when I let them down, which I always knew was going to happen, when I let somebody down, I needed to know I had enough in the bank to basically cover that failure. And when it came to like growing agencies and stuff, the first agency I helped rebuild, it ended up being, 60, 70 hours a week to make sure I was hitting those numbers, but I couldn't let people see it. So I would work during the week and then I would secretly work, on the weekend at nights. Like I was crunching a bunch of stuff, but I couldn't let people think that I was overworking. They had to see me as the guy who was fun and was crushing all the numbers with minimal effort. So I was like disguising and hiding, straight up lying about what I wasn't breaking any laws, but I was lying about who I was and masking everything. And that was the first agency, crushing those numbers and everything. Then the second one, then as I went through them, I got to the last one and figured out how to do it right, where I actually enjoyed me and my wife enjoyed me and my kids enjoyed me. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, like house rules, all new house rules across the board. So yeah, that's what it looked like was hit all the numbers, outperform, and don't get caught. Don't let people think that I'm dumb or that I can't succeed or that I'm lesser than. I can't be less than anybody. That years of therapy. I've now found out that I couldn't be seen as less than anybody. That was a big driving factor for me.
First of all, that sounds absolutely exhausting to me. Just exhausting, right? To hear that. But 3 different agencies, how many years did that encompass?
I was building and growing agencies for over 20 years.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And I think this idea of I have to compensate, I have to hide this, that it's taking me so much. What do you think people would have, well, let me just ask you, people around you who were successful, were they working long hours or were they did you see them in a different way than you saw yourself?
Oh, definitely. I was doing everything. I was trying to do it their way and it didn't work for me. So I had to hide how much effort and how much pain it was causing me because in my mind, success didn't look hard. So I had to figure out, okay, the people that I thought were successful, the people around me, I was like, okay, how do we do this and not be seen as working hard? And I'm going to sidestep here a little bit because ADHD. When I work with, especially people that are starting up a business, one of the first things I always tell them is like, there is a silver bullet to entrepreneurship when you start out. It's called hard work. Like just work it, like figure out the right stuff and do some work. Like it's still work. And work's not bad, but doing the wrong work is bad, is what it took me a long time to figure out. Is I couldn't delegate. I couldn't let other people in. I couldn't ask for help because those were all weaknesses that would show me as weak and show me as less than. And were other people doing it? Not the way I was. I was just trying to play by their rules and miserable, to be honest.
Yeah, I think what you point out, like we're in the midst of this unworthiness epidemic. I think we all have a feeling that we're not good enough. We're trying to prove ourselves. We're trying to perform. We have these productivity planners that are going to make us more accomplished, but everyone has their own story and their own way of getting to it. So what was it for you, Jake, that was the tipping point that made you look at this differently?
Yeah. Honestly, about 6.5 years ago, I was in a real bad car wreck, to the point where I actually lost the ability to speak for a little bit, and had no idea how far back I was going to come. Had to basically sit in a dark room, quiet. And when I started rebuilding, because of, my head got knocked around, so I had some traumatic brain injury that I had to recover from. And it just basically took a lot of time. I had a hard reboot, and it just took a long time for me to come back. But as I started coming back, it was kind of like I was more aware of the friction that my brain was feeling around me, or when I tried to start re-engaging the world or re-engaging tasks the way that I used to, I just would sit there and I'd be like, I don't want to. So there were two phrases that kept going over and over in my mind. It was says who. So anytime somebody's like, well, we need to do this, says who. You need to do this, says who. Like, do they have the authority to decide how I work? Right after the car wreck, my therapist was helping me through this, said, like, that was one phrase. And then the other one was, I don't want to. It's like, these are two very powerful things that I had to learn to use those phrases because I hadn't before. So after that car wreck and coming back and kind of rebuilding, it sounds really bad, but kind of rebuilding the way that I think, I approach work, I understand information, I talk. I had to go back and basically I couldn't fake anything because it was like, let's kind of start over. Let's reprogram some of this. And as I was going through that, I thought, I really hated the way I was doing a lot of that. So then switched the way that I was working and started allowing other people, and then noticing how other creatives and how other people operated. I said, how about if we design their jobs for them? And then as I help people with businesses, how do we help them work their way? Because there are laws which you have to obey or you go to jail. Like, don't break those. But there are rules that really are just kind of like the majority of people operate that way. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be done. So once I started thinking that way and thinking, okay, how do we apply house rules? How do we come up with new ones that work for me that plug back into the system without causing? Because I'm not going to demand that people like, well, this is how I show up, do it my way. Like, how is that any better than what I fought my whole life? So it's like, okay, how do I find a way to plug in, and how do I help others plug in? And what I realized was, for me, the load dropped significantly. It's called cognitive load. It's the idea of like, how much does your brain have to burn processing just to, like, what percentage does it have to burn just to exist, just to keep moving forward? And neurologists right now are saying it's 20 to 25% for employees who have ADHD. They show up every day, and the first 20 to 25% of their mental effort is not getting caught and not getting fired. So they have to do the rest of their work with the remainder and then hope that there's something left at the end of the day for their family. And I'm like, okay, that was my life, and I didn't realize it. But once I learned those numbers and learned how I operate and how I helped others operate, what I found out was it became easier to trust people when I was a little bit more vulnerable, when I was honest about who I was and who they were. Because it's like, okay, I know my limitations, I know my strengths, I know yours. Let's partner up and like not hide anything. Like, let's just knock stuff out of the park. So that was the tipping point, was after the car wreck, and then kind of coming back and honestly knowing that I have 4 kids. I couldn't go back into a 60, 70 hour week. I couldn't dive further in to work and I couldn't mask more because it hurt so bad at that time. So it's kind of like, okay, we need to find a new path. Like, basically, we need to rewrite all the rules. Is kind of how I started. So, long answer.
No, that's fine. There's so many things that have come up in this, in your response that I really like to pull out, especially for listeners. So whether you have ADHD, a diagnosis for that, or you're not really sure, or maybe you don't have it at all, I think one thing that really stands out to me that you said initially, Jake, was who says, and what was the second thing? The question.
I don't want to.
I don't want to. Okay. So I think whether you're in that situation or not, we all have the ability to choose, because there is this best practices. There is this one size fits all. This is the way you do it. And perhaps maybe you don't have to do it that way, that we all do have a choice. Now, like you said, there are rules that you have to follow. There are guidelines, how I do my work and what the output is going to impact other people, or timing. But I think when we can start giving ourselves permission to do it in the way that we're wired, in the way that we're designed. I know people who follow me, and I know you're aware I do human design, so I bring my own slant into that. But when we look at personality tests, and I'm thinking, many people have taken the DISC or the Enneagram, or, even maybe Working Genius, that we all can appreciate that we are not all created the same. And when we have that vulnerability to talk about, this is how I work, and understand that with each other, I think it levels that playing field of performance. And it sounds really refreshing.
It also, I love that. And I've always loved them because it helped me understand other people better. Yes, I liked the fact that I got to understand myself a little bit more, but when I understood other people, it made it like I wasn't as awkward. I knew how to, one, if I was a manager, get the best out of them. That sounds cold, but I mean in a way that was sustainable. I knew how to design things. I knew how to strategically build teams. And at the same time, with my family, for instance, there are the ways that we process information to store it in long-term memory, which is what we call understanding. If you can put it in long-term memory and pull it back out, you understand it. Well, there are 4 ways to do that, and my kids are each different ways. Oh. And you go, well, that's fun. They lead with a different version, a different blend of it. And you go, okay, well, if you know how somebody understands things, then we can present for them. You can actually tailor, you can design for the other person. And what I've realized is it's a way of being hospitable, of serving people, of helping them. And if we want to guide and help them, then we need to do it for them. Not well, this is the way it works for me. And that's probably again my background, coming up through school and everything. It was well, this is the way we do it. And I'm that doesn't make any sense. Well, as I've said with our kids and stuff, and as I've been managing creatives, which a lot of people in the marketing and the creative world, they went to art school because they didn't want to go to real school. That is what we did. So it's okay, they didn't like that structured system. They learned a different way. Well, how do we design for others? Well, you have to, like you said, the assessments can be very helpful. It's what can they identify as the elements that help them, or where are the friction points for them? And when we can understand that about others, and when we'll be vulnerable and work together, then it's amazing. Because, for instance, I can't book travel. It's my Achilles heel. I have no idea. I get lost. I get confused. My working memory, everything gets overwhelmed, and I just panic. And I have more than once booked to the wrong airport, and then I'm got to change that. It stresses me out, just the way that information is presented on all websites. But my children, my teenagers are really good at it. My wife's good at it. Other people, I'm I will buy you ice cream if you book this flight for me. And then it's done. And I'm this is so much better.
It is. And, I think we take on this mantle of I'm the leader and this is what I'm supposed to do. And I can't show it, I can't show any flaws. But I think if we could all celebrate what we each bring to the table and what our strengths are and what's not, just delegate, find somebody else to help with that. But, one thing you said about getting the best out of people, and I don't see that as manipulative, Jake, at all. I see it I want someone to find my brilliance and shine it back to me and show me where it is and pave the way and open that for us. So I think when we can understand what we each bring to the table, I think everybody wins with that. I think they really do.
I think you're right. I think it's if we feel safe with the person and we trust them, and if the person has gone first, then we're willing to do it. But we've probably all been burned, especially in the, post-industrial revolution way that we work. It's kind of like we've all been burned and we felt like a cog at some point, and we've been let down. So then we try to overprotect. And especially if you're a leader, I would say go first, because that's how you're going to break that. That's how that culture is going to work in any way. And then also, if you're an entrepreneur, I found that when I went out on my own and I was a solopreneur when I was first starting, I was the worst boss I'd ever had. Like, if anybody treated me the way that I treated me, they would be in jail. I realized that. And I was like, okay, this isn't okay. Then it's like, okay, well, what do I delegate things back to clients? Like, clients can do some of the work. Automation, robots, they can do it. Hire somebody to help me. And then, there's just a lot of stuff that just doesn't have to be done. Like, I was just masking, being like, oh, I have to be seen as providing this. And it's like, nobody actually wants it. Like, why am I even doing this?
All right. Well, I want to jump a little bit more into ADHD, because people who, who don't have this diagnosis, or if they don't, they definitely know people around them that do. And so one thing I want to pull out is you said that many entrepreneurs and creative leaders actually feel safe when they are in chaos, because that's familiar for ADHD brains. For those people who don't understand, like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And why is that how you're looking at it?
Yeah. Think of it like, if you're driving and it's somewhere that you're familiar, like, so say you go back to your hometown and you're driving and you're like, okay, my phone, my GPS is telling me to go a different route, but I'm comfortable with the route that I already know. So you go the route that you know. Like, we will trust ourselves and our habits more. Well, when, like, for me and, the 100 people that I've worked with on this, when you're in chaos, we have seen, I have a phrase I say all the time, I've seen me do it. And it's like, I have been in chaos and found a way out. I trust myself to get through this and get out of it more than anything else. So chaos means that I'm needed. I know how to get out of it. People celebrate me in chaos and getting out of chaos. Those are comfortable, fun. I mean, you get your dopamine hits, like, everything is internally, like, this is where we are celebrated. But when it's calm, sit still, everything's in motion, rhythmic, repeating tasks, all that kind of stuff, that's where we get yelled at. Like, that is where we get out of line. That's where we are disruptive. So it's like, in chaos, the disruption is good because people don't want to be there. But in calm, disruption is bad. So that is kind of, we're more comfortable there because we've seen ourselves get out of it, and people are like, oh man, you saved us. And another idea is, it depends on the way that people will kind of define, like, is there like security? So for me, if I'm in a boat and it's going crazy and I can see the shore and we're moving toward the shore, that motion towards safety, I feel secure. My wife, on the other hand, calm water, boat's not moving, that's secure. She doesn't even care if we're going to shore. She feels like there's a calmness. And I'm like, that's irritating to me. Like, that's frustrating because we're not going anywhere. Like, we're just sitting here. Like, what is this for? And I think that's the best way I know how to explain it, so that both sides of neurodivergent and neurotypical understand, is it's the path we're more comfortable with because we've seen us do it and we know we get out of it and people celebrate it, as opposed to, okay, now I got to do boring work. Like, that's hard.
Yeah, I think what you're familiar with definitely is the place where we want to be. So, Jake, you work with late diagnosed adults who say, okay, I have ADHD. Now what? What are the most common signs that someone is living with brain friction that they can't yet name?
Yeah. Wow. The most common. So if somebody's running like a small team, usually what happens, some of the signs that they will see that show up a lot are high turnover. an inability to delegate, communication issues typically all blend in there. And there's this just shame of being overwhelmed and the constant feeling that you're about to let everyone down. Because all of those actually go to executive function. And the big issues with ADHD that show up in especially business, in relationships and stuff, are the executive function frictions. And that's not everything that's ADHD, but those are the ones that I call them, those are the house rules that we have to change first. There are 6 main ones that society functions on. And the ADHD brain just doesn't. Like, we have to have adapters almost, where it's like, okay, I need to do this differently. For instance, one of them, the one I'm finding more common nowadays, is activation. And that's just starting the task. Just start it. And it'll be really common. I'll be talking to people and it's like, so what's the lingering thing right in front of you? Oh, I have to send this invoice. Okay. How long is this invoice going to take you to do? Oh, probably 5 minutes. How long has it been on your to-do list? 3 weeks. Cool. And then they start laughing. But yeah, it seems in our brains and in our emotions and everything, it is an like incomparable task. Like we cannot conquer it. We can't understand how, like I said, unconquerable. Wrong. Anyway, so I can't like get our mind to like climb this mountain to do it. And literally all you have to do is go like typey, attach, send, or if you have a system, like if you have a like Wave or a system or whatever, QuickBooks, you open up and you go submit. Like, that's it. But for some reason, something is standing between us and we just can't activate the boring task. And we know that we need the money. And there are a lot of other things, like, for instance, when it comes to invoicing, when it comes to getting paid and work, our idea is that money is secured. It's safe somewhere. Like, we're like a squirrel hiding acorns everywhere. But if we don't send our invoices, if we don't do our books, if we don't do all that kind of stuff, then we don't remember where we put all the acorns. And then it becomes a big mess because time blindness kicks in, and then it's like 9 months later, and then we're like, oh, I got to go collect all my acorns. And it's like, nobody's paying you 9 months past. Like, no, like you missed the window. So those are common things. It's just losing track of time, not being able to start a task. Sometimes it's too many ideas. I have too many things running because I got excited about all of them, and I got them right up to the point where it's like, is this a neat idea? Yes, it's a neat idea. Now it becomes work. I'm going to go find a new neat idea. And then we end up scattered with so many promises or too many things going, and then we can't delegate any of them because we're embarrassed at the state we left them in. So that's kind of a lot of people, when I start working with them, that is that overwhelm is kicking in, and it's they feel the shame because it's been they haven't been enough from the system that they've grown up in. And a lot of times discipline is another one that a lot of people say, like, I just don't have the discipline. I can't do this. I need to be more disciplined. I need to focus. And I joke with people like, I'm 5'8". I don't care how much you tell me to jump higher. I'm not dunking a basketball. Like, it's just not going to happen. And the same thing. Like, you can't just say, well, you just need to focus. I need to put my head down and focus. That's cool. Like, that's a cute idea. It's not going to happen. Like, you actually need to change something in the environment or the way you're approaching the project. But yeah.
Yeah. Wow. What a glimpse into that. And, I think we've all been in situations where we've had things to do. And, like, I think no matter where you are, you can sense some of this and have some compassion for this. But I know, Jake, you've talked about how many founders think their business is the worst job they've ever had. Yeah. So what is actually happening there?
There's a very common story, especially in agency owners and creative. You have a job and okay, I'm back up real quick. ADHD, like folks that have ADHD are 300%, or depending on the statistic, they're 300% more likely to start a business. They're also 7 times more likely to go out and be an entrepreneur. Like, so it's like to not just start a business, but to view that as their career. So they're 7 times more likely to do that instead of going into a trade or something that's more disciplined. Not saying that most companies are run by ADHD, just we are wired to go, I could do that and dive in without all the research. But you go in, you get good at something, you get tired of answering to a boss, those constraints that, you know, are on you. So then you launch out on your own. And what we find first is that a lack of accountability feels like freedom, but it's not. Like, that is what we start, and we love that. And then a lot of times you take on too much work. Then you have to have other people help you. And what happens is you all of a sudden build a business where you're not doing what you left to do. It's like, I want to go be a craftsman and do my thing and not give everybody else the money and not have all these constraints and rules. Well, now you're the rule maker and the rule keeper. And you're actually now doing 80% of what you hated and maybe 20% of what you loved. And it's like, but we don't realize that. We just keep performing and doing the things that we expect and what success was for other people and what we think that success is. We keep driving toward that and hate it. Like, we just really don't like it at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think that is so interesting, the percentages of entrepreneurs. But if you think about entrepreneurship is seeing a problem like and going after it. And I could see that with someone with HD. Oh, I want to go do that, right? And that whole freedom and flexibility idea that we all fled from a position working in a company, call your own shots, make your own rules. There's some dues to pay on that, I think, that we run into.
It's very enticing. And then you run into it, and then you left a box that was like, there was a big box. And now you've got this like random bunch of stuff stuck together box. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. No, like, that wasn't in the brochure.
No, that wasn't what was promised. So I know as you work with your clients that have ADHD, that you're helping them through this, Jake, that you have something called ADHD Tides Framework. You built this. What does that show people about themselves?
One of the most freeing things that I found for myself, and I found for people that I speak with, is that the first thing I want to do is we change the idea. It's not, ADHD isn't a design flaw. It's a bundle of design features. Other people just don't know what to do with it. It's like, oh, okay, so these are design features that just didn't fit what they expected. And once you start thinking about that, you go, okay, we can start, all of our feelings are real feelings, but they're actually not, like, we do feel them, but they actually aren't validated by an authority, if that makes sense. So for instance, I talked about discipline earlier. One of my biggest things is getting people to look at with the tides. There are times that we have high tide and our focus and everything, like, we can crush work and then it comes back down and there's nothing. And I was trying to understand this concept, and I was really dealing with it with myself. And I was down at the coast, down on the Gulf Coast, and I was watching the waves come in and out. And I thought, there's nothing more natural than tides. And then I realized, okay, I'm going to map my tides. So I started mapping them, and notice I never felt the rhythms. But when I started mapping them, I saw them. And they actually repeat. I can project. I know roughly when my high tides and when my low tides are going to be. And I know which type of work is going to take more cognitive load, which is going to take more out of me. So it's like, okay, I know which relationships are going to take more out of me. Can I align the heavy lifts to high tides? Can I get junk stuff done during the low tides, or do I just need to recover? And it's helping people figure out, what is that tide for them? What does that look like? And then the next shift that I love to get into is going, there's a difference between consistent and constant. And what I found is most people expect constant. But if you can figure out how to be consistent, then there's no shame in that. And then if you can map your schedule, if you can map different things to know when you're going to show up well, in kind of like time blocking, but less restrictive, fuzzier, but that kind of idea where it's like, how can we figure out our tides? And then if you let other people know what to expect and when to expect the best of you, then you're not going to let them down. And all of that shame and stuff starts to fade. because you're showing up as you with your rhythms. If you can align your best work when it should happen, I understand this is kind of pipe dream, like ideal situation, but the more you can move toward this, the better it is. And then on top of that, you start mapping your executive functions and where they're causing friction, and what I call the domino stack of as they are triggering each other. Then you go, okay, how do we move backwards and actually set the stage, align my tides? For instance, me, when my dominoes start falling, I don't necessarily notice that my executive function's out of whack until my emotions start to flare. And if my emotions start to flare, I know something went wrong earlier. And it's like, okay, what happened? And usually right before that, my working memory, basically I'm juggling too many things. I'm trying to remember things, I'm carrying things, I'm processing things. My brain's overloaded, so my emotions, like that is where the escape hatch is. And it's like, okay, how do I build it to where I don't carry things in my brain? So,
Jake, just hearing this, the power of this self-awareness of knowing when your high tides and low tides are, and the types of activities and when it happens and what would trigger all of that. I see that as being so responsible of knowing how to show up and give your best and being professional in that. And I also know, this is one thing I heard that just really touched my heart, is your client saying going through this is like being handed the rule book to the game they've been playing their whole life.
Yeah.
What makes this this insight so powerful for your clients?
Wow. You asked that. I started just tearing up a little bit. I've never asked what makes it so powerful for them, but I know what I've felt is I get to show up as me. I don't have to hide. And then that 20 to 25% of masking of, that I was just not getting caught, you basically get to drop your shoulders, exhale, and then that extra effort gets to go to important things like relationships or other work that you need to do. And I think, honestly, the thing I've heard most from clients is they're just like, thank you. Like, I believe in them. There is a hope. And it's this idea that we're not broken. We just have a different rhythm. And if you know your rhythm, then you can use it. Yeah. Great question. Now I'm like, I got to send an email and ask everybody, like, exactly, what are your words on this? And then I had a guy recently, 2 weeks ago, actually, we just went through some of this coaching sessions, and he just came back to me and he was like, he basically gave his workbook, like what we went through. He gave those assessments and the stuff to his wife, and she just looked and she goes, "Oh, you weren't being annoying. Like, you weren't intentionally being annoying and being mean. Like, they've been married like 8 years." And and she was just like, "Oh, like, okay." And I just remember thinking, like, in our family and with my kids, when you realize that's how the other person works, or that's how I work, then, for instance, for me, Thursdays are really hard for me. Just that is my lowest of all the days. That's the day that I have the lowest tide. So I know to expect to get 2 things done on Thursday. Mm-hmm. I only let 2 tasks be expected on Thursday. If I do 4, then I'm celebrating. But I also know that on Wednesdays, I crush it. I can usually, on average right now, I'm getting about 16 hours of work done in 6 hours on a Wednesday. Because it is the day that I am high tide and I'm crushing stuff. And I've my whole life felt guilty because I grew up in a blue collar area, and it had to be that consistent. This is what was expected. And now I realize if I'm getting that much done on a Wednesday, I could take Thursday off and still be ahead of the game. Now, I'm not saying everybody can do that or that you can do that with your job, with your boss, but just this idea of like, if you can put the heavy lifts on the day that you have the high tide, that was huge for me. And then letting the people who worked for me, let's see if we can figure that out. It's not always going to work. I mean, I still have to do stuff when I don't want to. I'm a grown up. That's, how we live. But finding those things frees you up, and then you're not guilty and you're not hurting yourself. Because another thing is, if you will honor the low tides, if you will actually acknowledge them and honor them, then the high tides will come back bigger. As opposed to, if you think about it like exercising, people talk about like leg day. And it's like, if you wear yourself out every single day, you're just going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And I realized that's what we do with our brains, is you got to take a day where you're not grinding and hurting yourself, or you're at least doing lighter lifts. And that's kind of the low tide. And people have fallen in love with this. Everybody's skeptical at first. And then when they map it, which I'll make it free, like it's on the website, people can download that and go through that exercise themselves. But it's like, you just look at it, and a lot of people will laugh. They look at it and they're like, oh yeah, I have the same guy I was talking about. He looked at it and he goes, I have a client that I've had for 2 years, and they're like my least favorite client. And I realized I only deal with them on low tide. So he was able to shift their meeting. And all of a sudden he's like, they're actually not that, like, they're not a problem. He's like, I just had nothing in the tank, and they were hitting me when I was at my worst. So by shifting them their weekly meetings to a different day, everything got smoother. So.
All right. That's amazing. So I'm assuming this is the brain friction scorecard you're talking about. Is that right?
So the brain friction scorecard will help you identify your executive function issues. There's also the ADHD Tide worksheet, which is connected in there. And that is a worksheet. It's just a PDF you map. You color in the little boxes of, this is how focused I am at this hour. You don't have to do it every hour. It explains it. The idea is that you're just going to kind of map how you're feeling across a week, every hour for the week. And I say do it right before lunch, do it before bed. Just kind of map where you are. And then when you look at the whole week, you'll see patterns. And it's like, for me, I am the most focused when I'm hungry. If it is coming into a mealtime, I'm great. But I also have to be aware of that, because I will hyper focus and get into a task and not eat. And then I get angry. So it's like, okay, this is not a good pattern either. But I also know that my lowest tides are right after I eat. So it's I'm not going to schedule anything important at like 1 p.m. Like, I'm not going to eat lunch. So lunch meetings are hard on me. What I tend to do is I meet with people, I talk to them, and then I eat after. Like, I try to, put my eating toward the last half of the conversation, because I will eat, and then the next 30 minutes, I go into like, post Thanksgiving nap time. I'm like, like, I cannot be held responsible for anything that I say. So.
All right. So I know this brain friction scorecard, like I'd heard 200 people within a week of, you having it, like they rushed to take it. What was it that people were looking for?
Man.
What did they want to know?
Well, everybody knows that we have some kind of friction, whether you have ADHD or you don't. If you're neurotypical, like, we have executive function. We all have limits to it. And we're all overwhelmed right now. And I think everybody just wanted to know, where is that pressure point? Like, where is the biggest friction? They were all curious. I also think that there was a group of people that were just curious, like, do I have ADHD? This does not tell you if you have ADHD. It just tells you where you are identifying friction. And I've heard a lot of people that in the communities that I'm in that were talking about the pain of ADHD. They don't know what to do. Tired of hacks and all the things that are just blanket offered to people. And this assessment was like a way to say, what about you? Like, what is your pain point? And like, what is the highest friction? And it actually will tell you all 6 of them, if it is a recurring friction point for you, and then some things that you can do about it. But it's not prescriptive, like, here are the checkbox things to do about it. It's like, here are 7 things that I know that work for that. Pick one, try it. And I also don't believe in hacks. I've been very adamant that I don't like the word hacks, because it implies that it won't work forever. It's like a cheap thing, but it's like tools. Like, it needs to be a tool. It needs to be an adapter. It's a thing that we use to get the job done. So when I approach it that way in the communities with ADHD, everybody wanted help, but they didn't want to publicly ask for help. And this is a way they could take the assessment, it would identify, and it just sends them a couple tips on, try this, follow up, and it explains it in a very simple way, as opposed to, like, I had psychiatrists like validate it, but then I didn't listen to what they said. as far as when they're like, well, it's also, and it goes deeper here. And I'm like, great, nobody cares. Like, we're not looking for more.
Right.
And I think that is why people rushed to it very quickly. It was just a quick way to figure out, okay, what is this? And now it's, I don't know, I'm probably approaching 1,500 people have taken it now. It amazes me. And it's not people that end up being clients or whatever. It's just, I get these emails from people that are like, oh, this is great. Or I hadn't thought of this, or that little tip changed everything. And I'm like, it just blows my mind that giving permission to just make little adjustments to things are not heavy, big, massive changes. Just what's a little thing that we can do that fits you better so that you can excel.
And I think so much in our world, we're always trying to figure out like how we fit in, how we're like others. But I really love that, we are all individuals. We do things our way. And I think all of us have I want to go take this brain friction. I want to find out where I'm running into things, right? All of that, which leads me to Jake. I think now more than ever, we see so many high performers, so many high achievers are going to get diagnosed to see if this is what they have, or seeking support if they feel like they are demonstrating some, just different ways of thinking. So why do you think this is happening now? Why do you think, where maybe before people were really hiding it, now we're here people coming out and talking about it? What do you think the shift has been?
I think there's a generational thing where it's kind of, it became there, especially, in your background in education, like there were the stigmas and where it was like, okay, like for me, they were like, sit back in the corner and don't distract people. And I never got diagnosed. And then I got diagnosed later in life. I was in my late 20s. And with that diagnosis, I was like, oh, now it all makes sense. And then it didn't, because then nobody helped me. Like it was like, oh, this is what's broke. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's how I'm broken. What do I do about that? And I refuse to believe that anymore. And I think that we just got tired of being told that we were broken, because it was like, well, watch me succeed. I think there's a generation of people that are like, well, watch me. And they've done that. And more people are being open about, it's not broken. It's fine. Like, it's just, this is how I operate. And when the more people, the leaders who are coming out and they're saying like they have ADHD or, autism, they're dealing with different types of neurodivergence, and they don't make it somebody else's job. That, I think that's the biggest difference right now, is there are a lot of people that are like, I'm just going to do it. And the reason they're asking for help is because they're not going into work and expecting their employer or their boss to make accommodations for them. They're looking for help so that they can fit in better, so that they can dial it in, so they can have those adapters. Because we found out that expecting a system to help us didn't work. Okay, so I'm going to get help and come back into the system and like just blaze a huge trail because I have what I need. So that's what I think. More people are being okay with that. And I don't know, it just seems like I can't imagine, say, my grandparents or my parents asking for help. Like,
right.
That's just not how they operated.
No.
And I think this is something that even, I think my generation starting to be okay with it, but it's definitely a later in life adapted habit, because our kids have needed help. And our kids needed help, and our kids get diagnosed and they get help. And as we're reading all the pamphlets about what's going on with our kids, we're going, I need to talk to somebody about this. And then what happens is then we get the help. And at the same time, we don't want our kids to go through an experiment that we don't understand. So we're more willing, kind of like, one of the reasons I have dove into learning more and more about this is for my kids, specifically my daughters. They've already got enough stacked against them. I don't want them growing up with everything I had to go through as well. So it's like, okay, how do we beat back this trail? And how do we find a way for them to have a smoother trail before they get there? So why are people more open? I honestly think it, from most people I've talked to, you get late diagnosed because your kid got diagnosed. And then you start asking questions. And then why do they look for help and why do they do that kind of stuff? Because either they've seen it help their kids, or because they want better for their kids. So they're getting help.
Yeah, I think that awareness is so powerful, even in human design, that I've noticed there is a tendency, there is a gate of focus that a lot of people who I find out end up having, that my clients, they have ADHD, and I see that they have this tendency through there. I just think it's education. I think it's empathy. I think it's the ability for people to be seen and accepted and celebrated for the gifts that they have. So I don't want this to only be seen, Jake, as something that is an academic study, or it's, this is behavioral. But I know you do a couple of things that I look at, like when I hear Jake Brown, I think of fun. All right. So there are a couple things. Actually, one of the headshots you sent me, you're lying on a bed of Legos. So that's one thing. And then I know that you do conference presentations on doodling, and you even have doodling bundles. So tell our listeners, because I want to bring some levity to this, tell our listeners what part doodling and Legos have in your life.
Okay. So with the doodling, this actually goes back, I'll try to do it real fast, but my grandpa sat down with me when I was young. I was 7 years old and I was having my first anxiety attack. Didn't know it at the time. And my grandpa just got butcher paper out and said, let's doodle. And he just kind of helped me get through that. And that became the safe place. Anytime I was overwhelmed, how do I calm my mind? So for, 30 something years, almost 40 years now, I've been doodling as a practice to calm my mind. Well, through lots of other studies and talking to neurologists and all this stuff, like I figured out why. I know the science behind it. But the idea is that has helped me so much that as I worked with either at conferences or with one-on-one with individuals and stuff, and I teach these courses where it's like, I just teach people to go back to doodling and be present with a thing that is never going to be judged by anyone. And then your brain regulates, your emotions regulate, everything pulls back to this state where you're like the best, it's almost like a reset version of yourself. And like you said, I've done this at conferences, especially when it's chaos and everybody's going and running around and everything. It's like, okay, I'm going to teach you how to do this. And it is one of the creepiest things in the world that you'll have a room of like a couple hundred people and it's dead silent. And you're like, these are like grown-ups, and you're like at a business conference and people are like out there drawing a little robot or whatever. But it's teaching them how to get back to being present, whether it's a task or a person or whatever. And especially folks that have ADHD, that is really, really hard for us. But when we can figure out that we're dysregulated, when we figure out like, okay, I'm about to walk into a meeting and I have 30 ideas flying around in my mind. Okay, I'm going to spend a minute, just put ink on paper. Okay, I'm now calm. And I'm ready to walk in there without blowing up, without, I say diarrhea, without just like vomiting everything on my people and making a huge mess. It's like, I have to regulate myself as the leader before I go in. That's what the doodling. And it's something, like I said, my grandpa taught me, not knowing all the science. But it became a part of what I do. It's what I do with my kids. And then I was like, I'm just going to start sharing this with more people. And it's been a lot of fun to do. And then the Lego is... it's called Lego Serious Play, and it's based on play therapy and neurodivergent communication. So how people with typically ADHD and autism prefer to communicate. And when we combine those two and help people brainstorm or come to an agreement in communication, like we need to come up with ideas, we need to discuss and come to a decision about the future of our business, or I have so many ideas flying around my mind and I can't make them a unit. So you build this metaphor and then you start talking through what the metaphor means. And then you go, oh, I've had clients that have done this. And the guy's like, that's what we've been trying to say for the last 30 years. And I'm like, awesome. Now you know how to say it. But it takes both of these exercises. I do because it calms me down and changes. It's a more natural pathway for me to think. So it's a neurodivergent pathway of like decision making and processing. And what's fun is when I take, even like when I go to an event and take neurotypical people through it, it's uncomfortable. But I like to think of it as like you're winding through a forest up the side of a mountain. And then all of a sudden you break through at the end and you have this like just amazing view. And they're like, I have no idea how I got here, but this is amazing. And I'm like, it's cool. I know how to get back. So
yes. And I sat in that room where we were drawing. And one of the hardest things, and I thought this was a really great lesson, one of the hardest things is when we got done, you said, and I'll take the paper and either rip it up or throw it away. And it showed me the difference between performing, right? Like doing it for the performance or doing it to be present in what we were doing. And I think so much of what we do in our lives is that performance, but to be able to calm your mind and not think about where it's going, we're going to hang this on the wall or somebody's going to see I drew this wrong, right? I think that is so powerful. So Jake, as we get to the end here, tell us about the work that you're doing. If somebody thinks that this is something that would be helpful for them or they're not really sure, like how do you work with people?
There are two main ways that I work with people. I do small groups where we get together and it's usually 8 weeks and we go through the executive function, the tides. We go through that just to build your playbook. And it is fun. They're super small groups because we all have ADHD in the room and it's all on Zoom. So you don't have to worry about getting somewhere on time. But it is super tight, super small. And I'm real picky about who gets in those because it has to be a safe place. So I do vet who gets into those. And then the other one is a little bit bigger and it has to do with typically the business owners and the visionary. And it's like, I will help them regulate themselves and figure out some of these for themselves. And then how does that then attach to the business? When it comes to delegating and things like that, how do we dial them in so they fit to a business? Usually, a team that that they feel like they're letting down in some way. And we kind of work through that. Those are really the two ways that I engage. And with that business leader, usually we all know visionaries who are like fireworks. They face out in the world and they put on a big show and everybody's drawn to it and they ooh and ah. And then they turn and face inside the building and then they're just, shooting fireworks, inside the building. Everything's on fire and burning and people are screaming and you're like, exaggeration. But if that is the situation, like that's where I like to come in and help because it really is just that they don't know the rules to themselves. Mm-hmm. And once we dial those in, then they can show up the right way and trust and delegate and, smooth out all that friction.
Yeah. Jake, I'd just like to thank you for bringing the compassion, the clarity, and the language to this group of people who often grew up believing that they were the problem, when really the world wasn't designed for the way that their brilliance work. What you're doing, what I see you doing and hear you doing, is you're really helping people come home to themselves, to be seen, to be heard, to be respected, and to value themselves. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
All right. So if you're listening and feel like you've been fighting your own wiring, please make sure you check out Jake's Brain Friction Scorecard and his work with ADHD founders. We'll put all the links in the show notes, and he may even have we'll throw in some information on the doodling because that's always fun to do with you and your kids. It may give you this rule book that you never knew that you needed. And as always, the best thing you can do if you know someone, you probably do. If it's not you, you know someone who experiences some of this different way of thinking, which is not really different. It's where the world is now. We're all individual. We all bring our own diversity to the table. So make sure that you share this episode with how our beautiful brains work that doesn't fit in the box we've been handed. So until next time, remember, strategy is no longer enough, and success follows those when we can be authentically who we are. You move beyond the status of stuck by staying tuned to that frequency. We'll see you here next week.